This week's episode is presented by Companion, only in theaters and in IMAX, January 31st. Iris and Josh seem like the perfect match, but when a weekend getaway together turns into a nightmare, Iris realizes that things aren't as perfect as they appear. From the creators of Barbarian and the studio that brought you The Notebook comes a twisted tale of modern romance and the sweet satisfaction of revenge. Audiences are calling Companion brilliant and twisted, unhinged and unpredictable, with endless zigzags in unexpected directions. Start off the year with one hell of a ride that you'll have to see to believe. Companion, starring Sophie Thatcher, Jack Quaid, Lucas Gage, Megan Surrey, Harvey Guillen, and Rupert Friend. Directed by Drew Hancock. The perfect date night arrives only in theaters and in IMAX January 31st. Get your tickets now. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
Flex your business with an American Express Business Gold Card. You'll earn 4 times membership rewards points on your top 2 eligible spending categories, like transit and electronics, each month, on up to $150K in combined purchases per year. Plus, you can now earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold, built for business by American Express.
I think I just won my taxes.
Yeah?
I just switched to H&R Block in about 1 minute. All I had to do was drag and drop last year's return into H&R Block, and bam, my information is automatically there.
So I don't have to go digging around for all my old papers to switch?
Nope.
Sounds like we just leveled up our tax game.
Switching to H&R Block is easy. Just drag and drop your last return. It's better with Block.
You have to control yourself!
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking, you don't have to get ruffles. We're talking, I can see your dirty pillows. And we're talking, Tabitha! It's my first movie adaptation! And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking stupid shit.
Oh, I wish that line just, hit harder. It's a great line, but I'm just that teacher sucks, and I wish he heard it and knew that he sucked.
The teacher? What? This is what Chris calls Billy all the time.
Oh, I was thinking that was Tommy's line when the teacher is making fun of Carrie for calling his poem beautiful.
Oh, no, he says, you suck.
You suck.
You suck.
Yes.
But yes, everyone, we are discussing Brian De Palma's original classic, Carrie. 6 years after we covered The Rage Carrie 2 in the first 2 months of our podcast?
Yeah, we never said that we were good at doing things sequentially.
We always do things out of order. But yes, y'all, we are finally discussing Carrie. Yeah, man. Yeah, I love this movie.
This is a 5-star fucking movie. I had it rated, I think, 4.5, and then I watched it today, and I just thought, this is sheer perfection. I would not change anything about this film.
Honestly, my thing, I would make this movie longer. This is a 98-minute movie, and I always find that there are just certain characters that I want more of, or certain, characters to have scenes with other characters more often in the film.
Okay, I can get that, yeah, because there's a couple of relationships I wouldn't mind seeing unpacked a little bit more, but I do find overall this film has pretty solid pacing, and as we mentioned in our discussion with Darren Stein in our kind of standalone interview that came out earlier this week, I was shocked at how quickly we get to the prom and how much left there is still in the film's runtime.
Truly. I checked the time and I was like, wow, 58 minutes we are at this prom, and then it's another 20 minminutes at the prom before we even drop the bucket.
It should not work, and it is so expertly executed.
Well, and I think that, people call this a horror movie, and I get it, this is a horror movie, but it's also it's mostly a drama for most of its runtime.
It's a YA coming-of-age film, baby.
Yes, it is. But curious, Joe, have you ever read the book?
I have read the book. So, folks, if you've been listening for a while, you know I'm kind of famously not... Mr. King and I don't always get along.
You're not on King's wavelength. Let's put it that way.
I love his ideas. I don't always love his execution, but this is one of the first books of his that I read because people said, oh, well, try this one because it is short, it is sweet, it tells its story very simply, but very well. And I agree. I actually quite like this book. So it's interesting to me how in some ways the book is quite simple and then De Palma, oh God, I almost said the E word. And then De Palma really brings his visuals in to like supplement and flesh it out.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I think with Carrie the book, I have read it, but it's been since high school.
It's been a while.
So like 20 years. And I really liked it too, but I think also like we hadn't gotten like all the King-isms that he would make part of his writing pattern.
Right.
They were not all there in Carrie. Like Carrie just feel like it feels like King, but it's still not like you can't read it and be like, oh yeah, that's a Stephen King book yet.
Right. It's not set in Maine and it doesn't have people farting yet.
I think it is set in Maine actually.
Okay, interesting. Because this movie is not set in Maine.
Well, I mean, it's filmed in California, but
yes.
Did they ever say where it's?
They don't say, but it feels so California to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay. Well, so let's just jump right into this because, Joe, I was actually kind of surprised with how much I got for this production, and almost all of it is coming from an interview with screenwriter Lawrence D. Cohen that's on Scream Factory's Blu-ray that came out in 2016.
Scream Factory still doing the best, doing the most.
Oh, I also have heard that their 4K upgrade is like night and day better than their Blu-ray of it.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I have a DVD.
Yeah, I have their Blu-ray, and it's just like, I'm not saying grain is bad, but it's like almost overly grainy in parts, and like also looks washed out in some scenes with some of the lighting. And so but I think it was sourced.
Upgrade.
Well, it was sourced from a DVD print, I think, whereas I think the new 4K was sourced from the original camera negative. So,
okay.
I know, all those tech words. Original, camera, negative.
Film. What?
Film. Okay, so yes, Carrie, based on Stephen King's very first novel, titled Carrie. Yes, this is kind of a tale as old as time, but the story goes that Stephen King wrote Carrie with the intention of submitting it to be published originally as a short story for the men's magazine Cavalier, because, interestingly enough, a friend suggested that he write a story about a female character, which I do find funny because while I do like a lot of King's writing significantly more than you do, Joe, I do think he often struggles with female characters.
Yeah, he's very, very good at writing from characters who share a similar perspective to him. So, like, white men, obviously he has a pretty good handle on. He's gotten better at writing older people as he himself has gotten older and so on. But yeah, when you start to step outside those margins, Uncle Steve can struggle a little bit.
Which is interesting, given that his first novel is a female-centric novel.
Well, is this where Tabitha comes into play?
Yes. So basically, he started writing Carrie and he gave up on it due to a couple of things, but mainly like discomfort and apathy. And he also thought it would never be successful. So he threw the first 3 pages he had written. He tossed them in the trash.
Right.
And who comes over but one Tabitha? I can't do it. I can't do it. You do it.
You know what? I like it when you try because it shows that you're putting in that effort.
I am putting in the effort. But Tabitha fished them out of the garbage, read them, and said, hey, this is actually pretty good. You should keep writing this. And he followed her advice, expanded into a quote-unquote novel because this is about 199 pages. So it's not even quite novel length. Yeah. It also had an epistolary structure, so we weren't dealing with a traditional narrative here. Like, the whole story was told via police interviews, newspaper clippings, and things like that post the prom massacre. So it's all building up to it. But, like, when you're reading it, like, it's already happened, you know?
That is so funny because you said that and I thought, oh, so when does he make that change into a more conventional narrative? Clearly do not remember a ton about Carrie the novel after all.
Exactly. Like, he goes the Dracula route. So, okay. Enter Lawrence Cohen, who was working for producer David Suskind in New York, and he got the manuscript for Carrie dropped on his desk one day. And He sat down and read it, and in the first dozen pages, he noticed that King had laid out what he calls an incredible collage of 3 things in a row that got his attention. So, the first thing was an incident when Carrie was 3 where there was a rain of stones reported in the newspaper over her house.
Right. Okay.
The other was cutting to Carrie in high school in the shower and having her first period, with the girls in the school being like almost Lord of the Flies vicious in how they attack her.
Yes.
And then Carrie going home from the high school hell she was in, only for us to find out she has a religious zealot for a mother who made the high school hell look like a day at the beach.
Right. It's a lot of hell.
Yeah, so he was, okay, these things, like, right here, this is already a good, like, jumping off point for a film. So
Right. Okay.
But he also thought that King put his finger on a lot of things. Mainly, though, he thought he liked how he could get in the head of a teenager. He said, better than most writers who write from the outside in, King worked from the inside out and was very in touch with teenagers.
Huh. All right.
So Cohen thought it was an astonishing first novel and sang its praises to anyone who would listen. And his boss, David Susskind, had just wrapped up Martin Scorsese's Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and he wanted, and I quote, a softer film like that.
Yes, Carrie, notoriously soft women's film.
Well, so when Cohen brought him Carrie, he basically thought he was like certifiably insane. It was like, no, like we are not doing a horror movie. Absolutely not.
Right.
So at the same time, Cohen was freelancing for a bunch of other studios and went to Warner Brothers and raved that they had to do Carrie, where it also got no takers whatsoever.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing is I didn't know that this film had trouble getting made. I think when you think of a classic, you're like, oh yeah, people made it and it was great. It was good.
We've got that 2020 hindsight, right? But the reality is, as Darren himself noted when we were talking to him, it's really fucking hard to get a movie made.
Yes, and we're not done yet. So even when the paperback rights sold for $400,000, there were no takes, and eventually Cohen just gave up on it.
Wow. Okay.
So he moves to LA and was looking for a job to pay rent. And a friend calls him and says, hey, there's this guy at Fox who just made a huge deal, and you should go meet with him to see if he can give you a job. This man was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid producer Paul Monash, who was known for creating Peyton Place, the first primetime serialized drama on American television. Like, this guy was a pioneer. He literally changed the landscape of television by essentially introducing the concept of primetime.
Okay. Nighttime soap stuff.
Basically, yes. So Cohen goes to meet Monash, and also fun fact, Monash would be instrumental in getting Tobe Hooper's Salem's Lot adaptation off the ground. So I think he jumped right from Carrie to that.
Interesting.
But yeah, so Cohen goes to meet him. He wasn't really impressed and was like, I don't really want to work for this guy. So
okay.
He starts walking out of the office, and then Monash goes, oh, wait, one more thing. I have one more project that might interest you. It's a film adaptation of this novel called Carrie. And Cohen's like, what? And he goes back.
My passion project.
Yeah, so he goes and he takes the job. Okay, well, by the time Cohen was hired, Monash had already commissioned a screenplay adaptation from another writer. And when Cohen read it, he was devastated because this adaptation...
Completely different.
Yeah, well, it wasn't particularly faithful to the book, and probably the big one, it wasn't very good either.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a bit of a deal breaker.
But the problem was the option on the book was about to come up. And so because they rejected the script they had no script to turn into 20th Century Fox.
Right.
Monash was in a panic, so Cohen just goes... Cohen, by the way, is in his early 20s, like 22, 23 years old, just goes to this producer and goes, okay, give me 4 to 5 weeks, I will write a draft. And he did.
Sure. You know what? As you do.
Well, and Monash was like, well, do you know how to do this? And Cohen didn't, but he was like, yep, I do. And went home and just wrote it.
Sell it with confidence, folks, especially if you're young and you're trying to get that foot in the door or get that passion project made.
Yeah, lie through your teeth and make sure you can sell it.
Sure, it's called grifting, scamming. Netflix will make a TV series about you later on.
There you go. But he returned a month later with the first draft of the screenplay, and Monash loved it. And they turned this draft into Fox, the executives at Fox, on a Friday. And apparently, what they would do is they would always get scripts on a Friday so they could do their quote-unquote weekend reads and have answers by Monday morning.
Oh gosh, that makes for a terrifying weekend for the people who have turned in those scripts, right? Like, we'll let you know in a couple of days.
Exactly. Well, they come back Monday, and Fox said they had no interest in the piece and that the project was in turnaround. Essentially, development hell.
This is not where I thought the story was going, Trace. I keep waiting for you to be like, and then we get Brian De Palma on board, and then we make the movie.
Yeah, I know. So basically, this movie went from a movie in development to a project with no home. And But, okay, so you know how sometimes things just work out? I mean, not for us, but like for famous people and like people with money.
Sure, yes.
That's pretty much what happened with Carrie. You see, a woman named Marcia Nassiter, who had been the agent for the book in LA and had sold the rights to Monash, had left her job and become one of the first female vice presidents at the production company United Artists. And the second Carrie went to turn around from Fox, Nassiter called Monash and said, "Oh, we're going to make this movie. The only issue is you have to use a budget that's about half of what a typical horror movie cost at the time." And so I believe, because the final budget for this film is $1.8 million. Oh
my God.
So
small.
I think the budget they were given was $1.5 million, but I don't have an exact number on that.
Okay. Huh.
But when it comes to the adaptation, so Cohen's big change was the removal of the epistolary structure.
Right.
The two things he chose to keep from the novel when he was writing his first draft were a flashback to the Reign of Stones that occurs when Carrie was 3 years old, which he did script as a prologue to this movie.
Okay, I could see it.
And the idea that Sue, as the moral conscience of the film, would in fact have a role throughout the movie, mostly tied into the White Commission, which in the book is the committee set up to investigate the events that happened at the prom.
Right. Okay, this is starting to come back.
Now, I will say, if you want to see what this version of the movie looks like, that is the 2002 TV miniseries with Angela Bettis. We do the White Commission in that story.
Okay, and you have said that one is okay, but mostly for Angela Bettis.
Okay, here's the thing. I think it's fine. I mean, look, when you tell me an NBC miniseries of Carrie from 2002, like, my expectations are, like, lowered quite a bit. And I do think it's the weakest adaptation just because of the budgetary constraints they have, but I don't think it's bad. When I hear people talk shit about that one, I'm kind of like, it's fine. And I do think Angela Bettis is good in it.
I mean, yeah. She's usually pretty fucking reliable.
But it is very much we're interviewing people in the survivors in the police station, and the whole movie is told in flashback, basically.
Right. Okay.
But before we go any further with that, now we have to bring in Brian De Palma. So, De Palma had read the script, I guess the first draft, and got his agent to phone up Monash and set up a meeting. Now, apparently De Palma was a terrible interview and chose not to pitch the film or himself at all. He sat there, was very terse, and refused to schmooze, which is something that Monash wasn't used to. Not because he wanted to be schmoozed, but just because that's how those meetings went, and De Palma was the exact opposite.
Play the game. I'm used to people coming in here and we wine and dine and then we make the movie.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, they didn't like De Palma going into the meeting because all the films he had made beforehand, with the exception of Sisters, were comedies. And they didn't think that that's what they wanted for Carrie.
Right. Okay.
So they weren't sure he was right for the material. And in fact, they actually wanted either Roman Polanski or Ken Russell on this movie.
Could have seen both making them, to be honest.
I agree. So, back to being in turnaround. De Palma's agent pressed the head of production at United Artists, who was a fan of De Palma's, to direct the movie. And then that head of production at United Artists called Monash and said, "Oh yeah, De Palma's a really good candidate for this movie." Monash wasn't impressed, but he understood what that was code for. That was politics, and it was basically code for, this is the guy. The job. Yeah, hire him, please.
Yeah.
And so Monash said, "All right, well, it's De Palma."
We will take what we have been told to take.
Luckily, De Palma had just wrapped up his first big studio film, which was the thriller Obsession, and he screened it for Cohen at his request. And after watching Obsession, Cohen then was sold on De Palma and said, "Oh, you do have what it takes to make this movie," which makes me want to go watch Obsession.
I was going to say, I haven't seen Obsession.
I haven't either. Okay, so then, though, De Palma does have a few notes about the script. So he sits down with Cohen, and he had 4 big changes he wanted to make. The first thing was remove any elements of the White Commission, because this was in Cohen's original screenplay. And go back to just the core story, which unfortunately meant that Sue's role was minimized because most of her stuff was involving the White Commission.
Right.
The other thing, and I love this, he really, really, really wanted to hire Broadway star Betty Buckley as the gym teacher.
Right.
So the thing is, in the book, the gym teacher, who is Miss Desjardins in the book instead of Miss Collins, has a smaller role, which means that she also had a smaller role in Cohen's draft. And so...
Right. So hard to attract an actress to sign on for it.
Well, here's the thing. He basically combined the roles of the principal and Miss Collins, which gave her more lines. And then they sent the script over to Buckley, who was like, oh... Like, yeah, I'll do this. This is a great part.
Sure, yeah.
By the way, though, Betty Buckley would go on to win a Tony Award in 1983 for Best Featured Actress in a Musical for originating the role of Grisabella on Broadway in Cats.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
she's memory.
Wow. Okay, yeah, because I was like, this name is super familiar. Like, it's funny, the actress herself didn't look super familiar, but when I looked up her name to do the plot synopsis, I was like, we have talked about Betty Buckley. Where have we talked about her? So I go through her filmography. She's worked with M. Night Shyamalan a lot.
Yep. I only because first my dad had a huge crush on Betty Buckley. So like even before I ever saw Carrie, like I knew the gym teacher was Betty Buckley and that she died. And
right.
Because my dad always hated that she died. But I remember when I went to go see The Happening, because she's the woman that bashes her face into a window in The Happening, and then she comes back, I believe, in Split.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so those are two things. The other thing, he thought that Carrie's means of killing Margaret in the book, in which she stops her heart with her mind, would not translate to film at all. So he wanted something more visceral, which is why we get the stabbing. All the instruments fly at her, which again, if you want to see the book version, that's definitely what happens in the 2002 miniseries. Oh, with Patricia Clarkson as Mrs. White, by the way.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's what happens in Kimberly Pierce's remake with Julianne Moore as Mrs. White.
Right. But, yeah, I mean, I could see it, but it would be one of those, like, the camera is inside the person's chest and you just watch it go, bleh, and then the person dies.
And it's really bad CGI, and at least the 2002 one.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is he wanted to change the ending because the book ends as sort of like an ellipsis where it's like a mother is writing a letter to her sister about her child who is quote unquote doing strange things. So it's like, oh, there's other Carries out there.
Right.
And that's how the book ends. And so they didn't want that for the movie.
No. Although, amusingly enough, this movie does set up a standard of, okay, how do we end the movie with one final suggestion? Well,
and that came like late into the filming process. Like they didn't have whatever ending they were going to do until like weeks into filming.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. They also added more comedy to the proceedings, which again is kind of a De Palma thing, but that mostly came in the form of Billy, the John Travolta character.
Oh, funny, because I mean, I think from a contemporary perspective, he's not a bag of laughs.
So it's funny because they say it's the Billy character. It's like, no, I think there's a lot of humor in the movie, and I do think that there's a lovable doofusness to the Billy character, but he's also so horrible that
he's just so horrible.
Yeah. So okay, all seems well and good, right? No. So it turns out that Brian De Palma almost walked over the budget of this film because he knew he needed a few $100,000 more than what United Artists was offering him.
Oh my God. I love that he knew he needed a couple $100,000 more, not like I need millions of dollars more. It's a different way of making films because this is the 70s.
Well, exactly, but that's how it was. But here's the thing. So as he was packing up his things, like literally packing up his office, he realized he knew the film was going to cost what he said it was going to cost, no matter what.
Right. Whether he was there or not, they were going to spend that money.
Yeah, so he decided, well, I'm just going to tell them yes to their budget, knowing I'm going to hit the higher number and they're going to have to pay, which is exactly what happened. So
love that.
The final budget for this film is $1.8 million, which today is just shy of $10 million.
Like, I'm sorry, a bargain at any price.
Right, but I mean, this costs more than a Blumhouse movie would have in 1976, you know?
Sure, but I guess I would say to that Brian De Palma, even at that stage in his career, is pulling bigger focus than most of the people who are working with Blumhouse.
Yes, absolutely. Unsurprising to note, the studio didn't really take it seriously during production because it was, and I quote, just a horror movie.
Sure. Yeah. And about women and about teenagers.
Yes. I won't go too much into casting because I feel like those are the stories we hear about the most when we're talking about Carrie. But I will say that while Sissy Spacek was being considered, her deal had not been structured. And so she had a job the day of her screen test for Carrie. And so she wasn't sure she was going to go. So she calls De Palma because she knew him already because she was the set dresser for Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh.
I know.
Didn't know that.
So she called him to ask, like, is it worth me coming in? And he told her, no, I've already got my eye on someone. Like, I don't think it's going to be worth you coming in and skipping out of the job you have. And this lit a fire in Spacek, who in her interview, she says, I think I cursed at him. I think I just said, fuck you. And she hung up the phone and made a plan. She was not going to that job the next day. She was going to this screen test. She put Vaseline in her hair to make it look gross as fuck. She didn't shower or wash her face. She put on a sailor dress that her mom made for her when she was 12 years old, took off the hem, and just wore it in. She had people running to her when she ran in for the screen test, be like, oh, let's get you into hair and makeup. And she was like, nope. Not doing that.
Going method.
Needless to say, she got the part.
Yeah.
So Carrie is released on November 3rd of 1976 in just 17 theaters in the DC area, and then expands to Chicago the next week after that, and New York and LA the week after that. I don't have much more information on the release other than it wound up grossing $33.8 million domestically, making it one of the most successful films of that year.
That is so much money for that budget.
So I'm saying it's like 20 times your budget.
Wild. Okay.
Yeah. It was also considered one of the best films of the year. We are looking at a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of 8.3 out of 10.
Yeah.
And Letterboxd users have it at a 3.9 out of 5 or a 7.8 out of 10. It was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, both in the acting categories. We have Sissy Spacek for Best Actress and Piper Laurie for Best Supporting Actress. Neither won because Network and Rocky were sweeping the awards that year. So actresses from Network, including Faye Dunaway, took the prizes.
That's a tough year. That's really good competition.
Well, it's also, again, a horror film. Like, the fact that they were even nominated is kind of a miracle in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. Also, sidebar, you said Laurie. Is it Laurie or is it Piper Laurie?
Oh, like the emphasis on the wrong syllable? Did I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just say Laurie because it sounds famous. Famous. It sounds fancy. Yeah, it's probably Laurie.
Okay.
Laurie.
Okay.
Laurie. But
That's
this
fine.
film also has a bit of a legacy. You know, as I mentioned, we've got 2 remakes in the 2002 NBC miniseries and the 2013 remake with Chloe Grace Moretz. And the theatrical sequel starring Emily Bergel in The Rage Carrie 2 from 1999. And we, of course, have the infamous bomb of a musical that has somehow made its way back into the public zeitgeist.
Yes, and don't forget that we also apparently, we will see if this comes to fruition, but Mike Flanagan is purportedly developing an Amazon TV show.
Yes, which...
We'll see.
Well, and that's the thing, though. Like, maybe some of those things that I'm saying, I would love more scenes between these characters. That's what we're going to get in that miniseries, assuming it's even a direct adaptation. I don't even know if that's going to be the case.
I mean, here's the thing. We know that Mike Flanagan works very, very well with King. He is often very faithful, but he's also very, very good at putting on his own sort of, soliloquy and in-depth characters and that kind of stuff. So I think if it actually gets made, it'll at least be worth checking out.
Well, but he's also never done a Stephen King property as a TV show. So I wonder if he would take the Haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor routes and do the basic skeleton of the story or the themes of the story, but still make it his own.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, you and I had not read Salem's Lot, but if you look at Midnight Mass, it is pretty closely aligned with Salem's Lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would have enjoyed Midnight Mass any less if I had been familiar with Salem's Lot beforehand, but but yes, it's very clearly Mike Flanagan's doing Salem's Lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's about all I got, Joe. So you want to talk about what happens?
Okay, so we begin with an overhead shot of girls playing volleyball in gym class before Carrie White, played by Sissy Spacek, blows the game point. This does not play well with her nemesis in all things, Chris Harkison, who is played by Nancy Allen, who walks off the court telling her to eat shit.
Man, and it's real biting. She means this. She wants her to eat shit.
Yeah, this isn't, you ruined the game and we had high stakes or something. This is petty, innocuous activity. And this girl might as well be saying, hey, go end yourself.
And the thing is, too, like, Chris isn't particularly, like, three-dimensional character. Like, she really has one, like, mode for most of this movie. But
yes.
I don't know. I think there's, like, a humanity in Nancy Allen, like, an inherent humanity in Nancy Allen that comes across in her facial expressions that I never once feel bad for Chris at all. I quite literally want her to get, like, skinned alive. But
she's a terrible, terrible person. But Nancy Allen has an almost, like, cherubic face. Like, she seems so nice, and then she's saying and doing the worst things.
Yeah, I think her performance adds a little bit of depth to the character where the screenplay falls short.
I agree. Yeah. Okay, so we get the credits rolling over slow motion images of the girls in the change room, and we are pushing through the steam to discover Carrie. She is by herself in the showers, washing her body, and we talked briefly about Pino Donaggio's score when we were talking with Darren Stein earlier this week, but this score is so deeply romantic and melodramatic and almost a little bit lurid.
Well, because that's a great segue, because I wanted to talk to you about, like, what do you think of this opening? I always think about Knocked Up. Do you remember Knocked Up when Seth Rogen's, he has, like, the Mr. Skin job, so he looks for nudity in movies, and
oh god, yeah.
There's that moment when Katherine Heigl is like, oh, opening credits, boobs and bush, and they're watching Carrie.
Right. Because, yes, I mean, we are seeing quote-unquote underage teenagers here in the change room getting naked. Of course, these are all very much adult actors, so we don't have to be overly concerned about sexualizing them. But, yeah, I mean, the whole scene, even just the choice to frame so much of this movie in slow motion so you can see and just take in everything.
But it doesn't feel lecherous, does it? Like, I don't get creep gaze off of this. Like, this just feels like we're on a tour of the locker room.
I'll confess I did get a little bit of it this time, if only because I was thinking a bit more analytically, you know, how are we going to talk about this scene? What are we going to reference? And so on. So I was a bit more keenly aware that this is Brian De Palma, and yeah, so I do think that there is an element of that, but I also don't think it's as bad as it might be if somebody was saying, like, yeah, you know, like, I'm directing this with my dick out or something. I mean,
yeah,
like you mentioned some other men who could have directed this movie, and I think with them we might have gotten something more exploitative.
Yeah, but I guess, like, we're not, like, zooming in on the breasts, you know, we're not zooming in on the bushes. Like, they're there, and I think the slow motion is what makes it, is what might tip into that field for me. But I think the slow motion also paired with the score, like, and all the steam, like, it gives it this almost dreamlike hypnotic effect.
It definitely does, even to the point where when we get to the actual nightmare sequence in the film, the very end with Sue Snell, it's not shot that different from some of these other scenes where it does almost look like we've got a bit of Vaseline over the lenses, doesn't it?
Very much so. But again, I couldn't tell if that was my transfer or not sometimes. Like, sometimes it seemed intentional, but it depends on how bright, like, if they were in daylight or not, really.
Yeah. All this to say, there is that hypnotic dreaminess to this, and I think even if you do feel like this is a bit of voyeurism, that's maybe part of the intention, because we're peering into this world that we don't always have insight into, and we're about to see just how mean and bitchy it can get.
Yes.
Okay, so we see Carrie washing herself, and in some ways you're like, enjoy this moment, Carrie. It's a moment where you just get to, like, enjoy your body, feel like you're doing something for yourself, and it feels nice, you know, the soap, the hot water, and all this other stuff. And basically from this point on, your life is about to be an absolute shit show. And this is when she gets her period and everything changes.
Yeah, I think I had definitely heard about this scene before I ever saw this movie.
Okay. Like, in what capacity?
Oh, I think my dad told me. But, like, because he was telling me about Plug It Up, and I didn't understand what that meant.
Yeah. I mean, as a young boy, unless you had had some pretty candid conversations with, like, a female relative, you're probably going to be like, I don't get it. What is menstruation?
Yeah. I mean, again, bear in mind, I was under the age of 10 when I was, because I think I've told you this before, but like when Halloween H2O came out in 98, there was a People magazine issue that was like, oh, all the celebrities in their first horror films. And they basically it was an expose where like they would give you the celebrity, show a picture of them in the movie. They would say who they played, what the movie was, whether or not they died and how they did, if that was the case. And
interesting.
I remember saying, oh, John Travolta in Carrie blows up in a car.
Yes, accurate. Very true. Okay, so we do get this close-up image of blood trickling down her leg. It's tastefully shot to hide the lower nudity, but we very clearly understand what's going on. Carrie, unfortunately, does not. And so she's got these bloody hands and she's stumbling towards the other girls. I did not remember that she lays hands on both Sue as well as Miss Collins. Like, you can see bloody finger marks on their clothes.
It's interesting. So the movie scene that always reminds me of this, which I have to believe was inspiration, is in The Faculty. Whenever the older nurse woman like goes into the shower with
Mrs. Brummel doing a Wet n' Wild.
Yes. Because Carrie thinks she's dying. She's literally, her hands are down. She's asking for help, and these people just pushing her off of them.
Guaranteed. I mean, this is a script written by Kevin Williamson, so
yeah,
you are on the right path for sure.
But nevertheless, these girls are awful.
They are incredibly cruel. And I guess, we hear, you mentioned when we were talking to Darren about how there's this moment where Miss Collins tells the other faculty member, I kind of wanted to slap her myself. Like, it's just her period. Grow up. And I think if you can put yourself into that perspective, their reaction makes sense, right? They're having a laugh, like, what the fuck is her deal? Oh, she's so weird. Why doesn't she just plug it up? Here, let's throw some tampons at her. Let's throw sanitary pads at her. But from Carrie's perspective, she has no idea why her body is suddenly bleeding. It's a horrifying moment, and these girls are so cruel.
It's also because, she's a senior in high school, so she's like 17 or 18 and is just getting her first period.
Yeah. Which, of course, like, if you start to look into it, women will have their periods at really varying ages. Like some girls have their periods at like 10 and 11.
Oh, yeah.
But, some people can have it really late and delayed. So it's not that unusual, but then you factor in the religious element. And there's also just a ton of shame about our bodies, particularly around adolescence.
Yeah. And one thing that Darren pointed out that I want to bring back into this, though, is that we do get a shot of Sue, Amy Irving's character, opening up the container, I guess, of sanitary pads and begin throwing them at her. And I think, again, it's a really intentional shot because we're showing all these girls, again, like a wide shot, but we hone in on Sue.
Yes. Yeah. It tells us immediately she is going to be playing an important part because you have to remember, we don't have any characters at this point. We haven't been introduced to any of these people. So yeah, it's like, okay, well, this girl is obviously one of the head mean girls because look at how she's acting. And then the rest of the movie will do character resuscitation on Sue to prove to you she's actually a good person.
Yep.
Just not in this moment.
No, she's just peer pressure.
Peer pressure, going with the herd mentality. Yeah. And as I said when we were talking with Darren, I really do think that these girls kind of get swept up in it. Like they're not thinking about the implications of it. They're having a laugh. It's just a moment.
And that's what Cohen was saying, though, where it's again, like these girls have this like Lord of the Flies, like feral mentality. Like it's almost like that they're not even like in it anymore. They've just been taken over by something.
Yeah. If I can make a not great analogy, it's almost like they're sharks and they're smelling the blood in the water.
It's an apt analogy.
Okay, so enter gym teacher Miss Collins, played by Betty Buckley, and she goes after Sue. I think in part because she sees something of a good girl in Sue. She knows that she's like her, like Miss Collins.
Yeah.
And she gets really mad at Sue, like...
Oh, she's shaking her.
Yeah, like we made a joke about how this film is very aggressive to underage girls, but it's kind of like, oh, wow, if you ever laid hands on a student like that, you would be disciplined. You might be out of a job.
That was actually something I was trying to figure out. Like, would this have flown in 1976, or would it?
Maybe.
Like, I couldn't, because Chris does say something later when she gets slapped, like, you can't do this, but she doesn't get her fired. So
no, yeah, it really feels like it could go either way. I'd like to think you can't do this kind of corporal punishment, but like here, it's a shake. It's more of a wake yourself up. You're in a stupor. What the fuck are you thinking right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So she then goes to Carrie. Carrie is completely hysterical in the shower, and Miss Collins ends up doing the same to her, more or less. So we do get this shrieking violin play. It is very psycho shower scene, and then the light bulb above them explodes.
Which they all do clock, by the way, but they're just like, oh, well, whatever.
Yeah, it's one of those, I think the mind erases what it can't explain. So they all know something weird just happened, but then they don't process it, or they don't sit in that moment. They just press on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Carrie ends up desperately hugging her, and then we move to outside of the office as Carrie is listening in to Miss Collins' conversation with Mr. Morton, who is played by Stefan Grierschak.
If you say so.
I'm probably mispronouncing it, but it's spelled so weirdly. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So they're talking about, like, isn't it weird? She's so old. How come she hasn't had a period yet? How come she doesn't know how to react? And it's very whispered. People shouldn't be hearing what you're saying. Like, you should not be having this conversation in a place where the person in question or any student can hear you.
Yeah.
But it's very much like, oh, she's so fucking weird. Like, that is the gist.
Well, and that, again, really, like, a good key line for Miss Collins here is her saying, like, the worst part of this is I knew how they felt. Like, it was just a period, for God's sake.
Yeah. Because especially to an adult woman who has experienced this monthly for X many number of years, this would just be old hat. It's nothing to get worked up over. Plug it up. But of course, this whole movie is dealing in issues of empathy, right? Like, how can you relate to somebody who doesn't have the same kind of experience for you? And I think we can have a conversation about whether what Sue does with Tommy and the prom, like, is that out of pity? Like, is she actually doing a genuinely nice thing?
Yeah.
Or does she just feel bad for Carrie?
Well, I think both can be true.
I think so, but I think it again casts a little bit of dubiousness onto Sue's character, right? Like, and it's something I do wish that we could play more with in The Rage. Like, I remember the conversation we had about how we feel that film mistreats Sue Snell as a returning character, but in some ways, it's like she still needs to quote unquote pay for the role she plays and what happens to Carrie White.
And I think that's where I would love to read, well, I guess it would just be the book, but like I would love to read Cohen's original draft to see how Sue figured into it more prominently, because it would have been mostly interviews. Like, she would have been talking to an authority figure about it, but I imagine we would get a lot more of her thoughts in in those scenes where there's no room for them here.
No. And you said you would have taken a longer cut of this film, but do we want Sue to be, talking to Tommy, this is how I feel so bad, we should just do something nice? Like, nobody wants to see that.
And that's the thing. This movie, I think one of the reasons it works so well is because it's kind of been stripped down to its barest parts. And that's not a critique, that's just an observation. I think it is successful because of that. It's so when I say, I want more of this, I want more of this, that's also not really a critique, more so just like I liked that and I would have taken more of it.
It's our usual refrain. We often say this in slasher movies with a bunch of female characters, right? We want more, not because we're not getting enough, but just because we like these characters, we like this world, we like this story, and we would have happily taken more.
Right, yes.
Yeah, but I agree with you. This feels like a story that has been stripped of all of the fat. Like, it is a lean story, and we are telling it well. Okay. I do love some of De Palma's shots. Like, we get a lot of deep focus shots. So we're seeing things in the foreground as well as the background. So Carrie listening in as we're still very clearly seeing Miss Collins and this other guy talking in his office. But there's this one moment where we kind of focus on Miss Collins' shorts And this guy, Mr. Morton, is distracted because you can very clearly see the bloody fingerprints that Carrie has left on her white shorts.
Yes. Oh my God. This actually reminds me of a film we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks, in which, like, we're in a sex ed class and it's like, oh, like, why can't we look at the vagina? Oh, well, that's different than men. Like, the modesty. And so,
yes,
that's just, a little blood. Okay.
Yeah, like to him, it looks like she has been marked by an alien race. He is so fixated on it. And you're just like, I'm sure if you're a woman, you probably had several experiences where you unexpectedly got your period. You've got a bit of an oopsie. You need to hit the ladies, change your pants, do something of that kind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's distracted by the stain on the white shorts, but also we very clearly understand that he is not an empathetic or even particularly attentive educator because he cannot remember Carrie's name.
Not at all. Oh my God. I was screaming at him.
3 times.
Yeah.
And I get it. I'm a person where you introduce yourself to me and I nod and immediately forget your name. I'm terrible with names.
I'm the same way. I get it. But in a situation like this, I feel like, even for me, my brain would kick in and be like, okay, hey, maybe get the girl's name right. She's had a traumatic experience.
Truly. Either that or just don't say the name. You've had a rough day. Why don't you head home? This guy's just an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Carrie also kind of thinks it, although you can tell this is a subconscious effort. She's just so meek. And she can't look this guy in the eye because, of course, she heard them talking about her. So she's staring at the cigarette butts in his ashtray. But when he gets her name wrong that 3rd time, oh boy, does that ashtray go off the edge of this desk.
Yeah. And again, this is something like they both see it, but like no one says anything. I think this is something where I think in the book there's maybe a bit more insight into Mrs. Collins being like, that's weird.
That is unusual.
Or Miss Desjardins, I'm sorry. I don't know why they call her that in the book, but whatever.
Miss Desjardins. Yeah. All right, so we send Carrie home, and she is walking. This is a kind of funny scene because you could take this out of the film and you wouldn't actually lose anything, but it immediately endears me to Carrie so much because we've just got this shitty little boy on his bike calling her creepy Carrie, and she knocks this motherfucker down.
So I do agree with you that you could remove this, but I think what this scene for me does, it shows it's not just the people in the school that treat Carrie like this. It's the whole town.
Oh, well, because we haven't met her mother yet, but whatever the community is responding to with Margaret White is definitely trickling down to Carrie.
Well, also because their house, like the exterior is quite ugly. And so I imagine it's like, I'm surprised Stephen King doesn't have it's that house on the street, like the oh my God, the Neibolt Street house from It.
Right. I mean, it might as well be because they're very clearly coded as either ostracized, looked down upon, or maybe poor. Like the inside of the house doesn't look bad, but we do see Margaret White walk past an empty lot right next to their house. So it's like, that's not a new build. It's not like somebody's coming in to build a dream house or anything. Yeah. That's, you live next to a shitty property that is probably decreasing your property rate.
So I think, don't take my word for it, but I think the idea was in the original prologue with the raining stones, they destroyed the house next door to them.
Yes, that does track. That would make sense.
The reason they didn't keep it, by the way, though, is because I guess they did. They filmed it. They had the effect, but apparently
did they? Okay.
The effect looked like the stones looked like raindrops instead of stones, and then they didn't have the budget for something else, and so they just scrapped it entirely. And that's why it just starts on the volleyball game.
Okay. It's the kind of thing where when you tell me about it, I miss it. But if I didn't know, I don't.
And again, I think we add the stones into the 2002 miniseries, which, by the way, remember, that had Brian Fuller's involvement in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of Margaret White, let's introduce Piper Laurie. She is calling on Sue's mother, Mrs. Snell, who is played by Priscilla Pointer, and she's there to talk about the Lord's work.
My God, I'm sorry. I just couldn't get over because this is like, the early days of like people watching TV, I guess, for leisure, like in their homes. But she has this like tiny little TV with the most enormous bunny ears on it on her coffee table. Like it's not even like in the spot where you would normally put a TV in the living room. It's just on her coffee table, and she's sitting on her couch with her drink, watching it.
Yeah. I mean, like if this is the 70s, we would have had TV in homes for going on 30 years, but it's one of those things where, I mean, this idea of the stay-at-home mom or wife watching her daytime television, it's very telling in terms of Sue's economic status and like what we can afford. Whereas here's, Margaret White out pounding the pavement trying to spread the good word. But I think also, like, how many houses do you think she goes to, collects $10 because the woman is like, if I give you money, will you leave?
But the way her demeanor just changes as soon as she realizes it's also the thing where you're like, don't you know these people, Margaret? Like, they're not going to do this. Is this your first time going around door to door?
But she's so devout that she doesn't care, right? Like, she has to make the effort to try to save these people.
Yes. I will say, though, I love the comedic beat. These are godless times, Miss Snell. I'll drink to that.
And then she's like, ooh. I mean, shit. Somebody rescue me from this.
I mean, yay, Jesus.
Yeah. I do also love that moment where she goes and answers the phone and she's kind of laughing, like, Margaret White is here.
She's like, I'm trying to get her away, but she won't leave.
Yeah. Okay, so Margaret White walks home, and we do see that Carrie is watching her from the upstairs window. And when Margaret goes inside, she gets a phone call, and we don't hear the conversation, but we obviously know it pertains to what happened at school that day. And Margaret knows that Carrie is listening, so she calls her down, and you think, okay, how is this conversation going to go? It's a woman of faith. Is she going to care about her daughter? How is she going to educate her or make her feel better? And no, she declares that Carrie is a woman, and then she proceeds to smack her a bunch of times with a Bible and then demand that she repeat passages about sin, intercourse, and the curse of blood.
Yeah, was it the raven was sin? And the raven was sin. Say it. Say it. Say it.
No, Mama, no.
The raven was sin. Oh, God.
It's one of those things where you think you could play this really big, right? Like Piper Laurie is controlled psychoticness in this movie, and you could play her so fucking big, and you could play up the abuse to a much greater degree. But I find this so effective because you understand that this is ritual. We do this all the fucking time. Like, whatever happens, this is what we do. And Darren said there is love between mother and daughter, but it's always filtered through. There's this barrier, right? Like Margaret's religiosity is so fucking extreme that there are key moments where you need to treat Carrie like your goddamn daughter, not like your disciple. And Margaret cannot cross that threshold.
Yeah. I mean, I have questions about some of Margaret's theology because some of it doesn't some of it seems conflicting. I mean, in general, the whole thing about, we're not going to have sex. I was like, but like in the Bible, like procreation is a thing. Yeah. So like sex between two married people is fine. Like it's a section of devout Christianity that I'm not fully familiar with.
Yeah, like it is taken to such an extreme that it almost seems like she is a woman who actively hates or is afraid of men. And again, when we were talking to Darren, you mentioned there's this possibility that Carrie is the child of rape because of the way that Margaret reacts to the ideas of sex and being in a relationship. And I do think that could easily explain a lot of her more extreme characteristics.
Yeah. But it doesn't come off as too cartoonish. Like I think Laurie grounds it a bit in reality, so it still feels real, and which I think makes it scarier.
Well, question for you. You mentioned that she wasn't attracted to the script, but then she came around when she was told that there is comedy in here. do you see comedy in this character? Like, is she playing her with a kind of undercurrent of, well, this is a bit campy, this is a bit ridiculous?
So that's the thing. So it wasn't necessarily that there was comedy in the screenplay. So she read the script, thought it was too much of a caricature, but then her husband told her, well, De Palma puts a lot of comedy into his films.
Right.
And so then she said, oh, I need to read the script as a satire instead. And then it clicked for her.
Okay.
And so I don't even necessarily think that it's the comedy in Margaret's role. I mean, again, I do think there's comedy in this movie, and we'll discuss it. But like, I could almost see. Well,
she's taking the piss out of people like this.
Yes,
with satire.
I could see the satire, because at the same time, like, this does seem like an extreme version of an overly religious person.
Yes,
but again, like, it still feels real.
That's the thing, right? I mean, I feel like we see this character even in King's World, right? What's the woman's name in The Mist?
Oh, Mrs. Carmody. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, this is a King character. He loves to do people who have tipped too far into religion. To be a little bit gauche, they have drunk the Kool-Aid, which I know is a Jim Jones reference, and we shouldn't really be talking about a giant massacre, but it's like, people who have become so devout, they lose themselves and a lot of their humanity. And I think that there is something where you can say, well, we should make fun of these people because they are utterly, like, they have gone too far.
Yeah, well, also because we don't know anything about Margaret's childhood, which isn't something I really care about, but like, it's like, how did this woman get this way?
Yeah, and question, I remember back in the day when we had BJ Colangelo on as a guest, I think she made a Margaret White short, did she not?
She might have. I feel like that was like early or pre-pandemic, so my memory is wiped of that.
That's fair. That's very fair, yeah. Okay, well, all this to say, I mean, I appreciate that you said it feels like part of Margaret's doctrine doesn't entirely fly, like, is she accurate in some of these things, or the areas that she's choosing to focus on? So I'm going to bring in one of two references for this episode. There's a piece by Brant Lewis called They're All Going to Laugh at You, exploring the queer and trans lens of Carrie for Slay Away. And Lewis says her, meaning Margaret White, her penchant for abuse, preaching, and spitting out Bible verses to support her views resembles how people will pick and choose scripture to support their homophobia. Instead of caring about Carrie, she protects the projected image she has of her daughter and forces her back into a literal closet when she gets out of line.
Yep. Oh boy. And this closet with the creepiest Jesus statue I have ever seen.
Yeah. So, obviously, putting a person who is different into a closet is going to resonate a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit.
It's going to hit home for the queer people in the audience. But I love how tightly De Palma shoots this, because it feels like we might as well be in a confessional booth, right?
It's claustrophobic.
Very claustrophobic. We do have a candle. We have this creepy ass Jesus figure. And even the fact that this isn't just like a cross. This isn't, Jesus on the cross. This is Jesus with all of the fucking spears and the crown of thorns, and like the eyes look like he is bug-eyed, like he's in so much pain.
Because I'd never seen a Jesus figure with the arrows inside of it. Because
it's terrifying.
Well, because I know, like, I don't. I have to see if it was historically accurate, because the crucifixion I remember is that he's crucified, but then they pierce him with the spear to drain him of the rest of his blood. But I don't think the arrows are documented. But either way, but whatever.
I mean, I'm sure somebody is going to let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Play.
All this to say, very claustrophobic, intense moment. And it's not like go in there for 5 minutes, say a prayer, and come back out for dinner. We're talking hours later. Carrie comes out and she knows how to play this game. She has learned how to deal with her mother, so she acquiesces. She says goodnight. She kisses her mother goodnight. And then she goes upstairs, looks at herself in the mirror, sobs, shatters the mirror.
Also, just a stylistic note. So we get, maybe not the first in the movie, because we've probably already gotten one, but we get a lot of split diopter shots in this movie.
Yeah, we do.
And so, when Carrie emerges from the closet, we're like up in the foreground with Margaret, and we've got, you can see the split too. It's like a blur on the side of her head, of her hair, actually.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, I know for some people, De Palma is the lesser man Hitchcock, and he just always resorts to these kinds of visual tricks. But I remember the first time I watched this movie and we go split screen during the prom. It blew my fucking mind.
Well, and funnily enough, there was supposed to be more split screen in it, but like it didn't work out the way De Palma wanted, so he had to excise a lot of split screen in the prom sequence.
Oh, interesting. I feel like there's a good amount.
I know, which makes you wonder, like, well, how much was there?
Brian, you can't just shoot 40 minutes of prom sequence. Well, actually, you could, right? I mean, I guess if you're really trying to suggest action happening in different parts of an environment, but like they're speaking to one another, I could understand the power of that.
Yep.
Okay, so the shattered mirror does attract Margaret's attention, but Carrie has, I guess, learned how to control things a little bit better because she does manage to piece that mirror back together before Mom comes up.
Which I love that it's done off camera.
Right? Yeah. Because I think that effect would also look like shit in 76.
Oh, I mean, actually, that's probably why they didn't show it.
It doesn't matter. Sometimes the not showing is actually stronger. Okay, so next day, English class. Let's meet Tommy, played by William Catt. Carrie is obviously obsessed with him, and who wouldn't be? He's very dreamy. We learn very quickly that he is emotionally intelligent. I thought we were reading somebody else's poem, and Tommy was just snickering.
Yeah.
And then we learn this is his poem, and he's like complicated. He's a cute little boy.
Yeah, Tommy, with the exception of Miss Collins, Tommy is like the biggest sad casualty for me because he is so genuinely nice, and William Catt, it just oozes charisma. Like every time, you know me and long hair, Joe. I don't like long hair on guys, but
I mean this is the style of the time.
Well, but every time William Catt smiles, I just like melt a little bit. Like he's so charming.
Oh yes, yeah. It's funny, right? Because you very much get the impression that Billy would have been the prom king if he had have gone.
I don't.
You don't think so?
Well,
but it's not going to be Sue and Tommy. Like it's going to be Chris and Billy.
Well, but I guess because we don't get a sense of Billy's place in the hierarchy. Like, yes,
do we even see him in the school?
I
ever?
Don't think so. So that's the thing is like he seems like the bad boy, like washout who like skips class all the time. So like I didn't. It's weird. Like Chris is obviously popular / the bully girl, but I never get Billy as the popular boy in school. But at the same time, I feel like he has to be because otherwise Chris wouldn't go to prom with him. We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah, like the nature of their relationship, obviously very fraught, obviously very abusive on both sides. And yes, folks, I will correct myself. Obviously, we do see Billy on school grounds because he's in the fucking gym. But I mean, like, we don't see him interacting with other kids. We don't see him in class. We don't see him playing football or something like that. So we don't really understand his social hierarchy position.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do get shithead burnout, but also maybe just the most popular guy in school because everyone's afraid of him.
Burnout. Thank you. That was the word I was trying to think of when I was saying washout.
We got there. We understood what you meant. Okay, so yes, people don't make fun of Tommy for having this very emotional kind of ballad poem, but we do make fun of Carrie, including the teacher.
The teacher makes fun of her. Like, oh my God.
And here's the thing. It's not even like she says, that was the most gorgeous thing I've ever heard. Like, Tommy, you're so... Like, this has not Never Been Kissed, where we stand up and we declare our love in poem form, and it's humiliating. This is Carrie White saying... beautiful. Yeah. And everybody mocks her like she has said the stupidest fucking thing they've ever heard.
And luckily, yes, Tommy does say you suck here, which is great. But the fact that this teacher joins in on it is just, it's mind-boggling to me. How horrible. And honestly, because I think he gets electrocuted at the prom.
I think satisfying. So. This might be Mr. Fromm. Or Fromm.
Yeah, it's either the principal or this guy that get electrocuted. But either way, they all die. So it's
two men get electrocuted. So it's I like to think it's both.
Yeah, I think it's both. Whatever.
Why not both?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, let's hit gym.
Ooh.
So Carrie has been excused from gym for a week because of her period, but we do see that the other girls are getting the riot act. So there is a janitor who is cleaning up graffiti that says Carrie White eat shit.
Yep.
But Miss Collins is berating these girls. So tell me all about it, Trace.
I mean, just because I feel like I was bullied in elementary school and middle school. Not really in high
folks,
school.
Go back and listen to our Carrie 2 episode. That's where we talk about it.
But like this scene, even today, as a 35-year-old, like watching this scene of her taking these girls down, it is so. It's almost as cathartic as the prom scene.
Yeah, and like again, if you're looking at it from a very 2025 political lens of an adult treating girls this way, is she abusing her power? Maybe just a smidge.
I don't give a fuck.
You very much get the impression that Miss Collins has had to deal with shit like this, and this is her opportunity to say, I am going to take you down a peg or two, because Chris, you suck.
Oh, I love the where she's like, oh, we were gonna take away your prom tickets. Oh, that'd get you where you lived, wouldn't it? Well.
Even she takes the time to say, who are you going to prom with? You know, oh, I guess you're going to have a really great time. You fucking bitch.
Yes. Oh, and she says, like, and you would deserve it too. You deserve anything that comes your way. Oh, like this is just a one. I love this.
It's very satisfying,
and it really gives Betty Buckley a chance to like really endear the audience to her.
Absolutely, yeah. So we do end up settling on 1 week of detention, but not traditional detention. It's with her, so it's going to be this athletic detention that sucks.
The way she delivers that. But there's a catch.
Taking a lot of delight in this.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, it's so satisfying. And actually, all of the girls are genuinely like upset by all of this. Even Chris, who is masking it with rage, but she's upset.
Yeah. We have figured out how to hit them where it hurts. If you can't keep them from going to prom, this is a good second best option. Any thoughts on Donaggio's very 70s score during this montage? I feel like this is what I remember of Carrie. Like, I know a lot of people hone in on the prom sequence, obviously, because it's, iconic. But this gym montage, I'm just like, if you play me this music, I will tell you it's from Carrie. I know it that well.
Yeah, this like, it's such it's weird music. It doesn't feel like it fits with the rest of the score, but I think that it's a comedic beat.
It is, yeah, because we're just watching these girls be put through their paces, and they are exhausted, and Miss Collins is just kind of eating it up.
This week's episode is presented by Companion, only in theaters and in IMAX, January 31st. Iris and Josh seem like the perfect match, but when a weekend getaway together turns into a nightmare, Iris realizes that things aren't as perfect as they appear. From the creators of Barbarian and the studio that brought you The Notebook comes a twisted tale of modern romance and the sweet satisfaction of revenge. Audiences are calling Companion brilliant and twisted, unhinged and unpredictable, with endless zigzags in unexpected directions. Start off the year with one hell of a ride that you'll have to see to believe. Companion, starring Sophie Thatcher, Jack Quaid, Lucas Gage, Megan Surrey, Harvey Guillen, and Rupert Friend. Directed by Drew Hancock. The perfect date night arrives only in theaters and in IMAX January 31st. Get your tickets now. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike Big Wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy. That's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
So, we get more minor abuse here.
Yes. Chris tries to stage a coup. And I do love that she tries to rally the girls. Like, she can't do this to us. And she's so pathetic.
Yeah.
And then Sue just goes, just shut up.
Yeah. Like, give it a rest, Chris. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, Buddy Buckley had to slap Nancy Allen 29 times in this scene.
God.
Yeah, apparently Buckley went to Allen and was like, look, you're flinching now because I've done it like 15 times. Don't flinch or we're never going to get through this.
But also, you should never actually be hitting somebody. Like, it should be stage slaps.
Oh, come on. No, they're slapping people back then.
Oh my God. It was a different world.
I fully believe De Palma was like, no, slap her.
Yeah. Okay, so while we're doing this, meanwhile, Carrie is doing... I could have taken more of this. We're doing research, but we're not looking, sadly, through like a Rolodex or a microfiche. We're just looking it up in the card catalog.
The Dewey Decimal System.
Yes, we're just looking it up in the card catalog. But again, this feels like a very queer thing, right? You know, it's the am I gay, put it into Google search kind of deal. It's like insert queer instead of telekinesis.
Oh my God, like a wave of like, I don't want to say it's nostalgia, but I'll use that word, like flooded over me because yes, I totally remember like Googling like, how do you know if you're gay or like things like that.
Yeah, like what does it mean if I can move things with my mind? Also, what does it mean if I want to put my dick in somebody else who is of the same gender? I will say the only thing I don't like about this movie, this one scene where we have to listen to her read the definition while we watch the definition. I was like, we're not stupid. You don't need this in here.
Just hammering home the point in case people aren't listening or watching.
God, people weren't on their phones. It was 1976. They were watching the movie.
They were on their I don't know what they had.
What, their newspaper?
Yeah, they were on their newspaper.
Older folks are going to hate us for that. Okay. So as she is doing this, we are also seeing Sue ask Tommy to take Carrie to the prom, and he eventually acquiesces. It's funny because there's this moment where she's doing her homework and he's watching TV and they're not saying anything. And you can tell that she was like, I'm not saying anything to you until you agree to take Carrie White to prom. So we also now are up to the point where we introduce Billy, one John Travolta, who I always forget is in this movie.
See, if it wasn't for that People magazine, I can't forget it.
There you go.
I love too, we're using an actual song. We got the Heat Wave, or not the Heat Wave, just Heat Wave.
Yeah, and even just this idea, to me, this is so 70s, where we're just driving the strip and people are driving alongside us and having conversation and passing beers to us and stuff.
But again, then we get that comedic beat with the cops.
But this tells us so much about Chris's relationship with Billy in just one, maybe two scenes where she is all about applying her makeup, looking pretty, but, you know, he's looking to party. He's being hit on by other girls. And then when he spills the beer in her lap, because, we're trying to hide it from the cops, they just explode at each other. And she's not afraid to call him a stupid shit, and he's not afraid to smack her in the face. Even when we then park the car so that we can have a conversation and also engage in some fellatio.
Oh my God. Okay, Joe. So I wrote in my notes, because everyone, you have to understand, Chris, while she is blowing Billy, somehow manages to say the words, I hate Carrie White with a mouthful of dick. And I don't give a shit about telekinesis. I want that power.
So you want to be able to talk well giving it.
Yes, exactly.
It seems like a very specific and not very practical power. Like telekinesis is going to do you better in the long run.
Yeah, probably so, but you never know.
I'm just saying, I love this idea that if people ever said, you know, oh, if you could have a superpower, what would you want? People are like, teleportation, telekinesis. Oh, I want to be able to talk while giving head.
But also, this is also punctuated by a really funny moment where she says, I hate Carrie White, and Billy's reaction while he's getting blown is just, who?
Which makes me think maybe he really doesn't go to school.
That's
ever.
What I'm saying. Well, because I know in Kimberly Pierce's one too, like he's like a shaved head guy. Like he's definitely like the bad boy, and he looks like he cuts class all the time.
Right. I mean, I think the other way to read this is that the men, because even Tommy doesn't really seem to care. He cares because Sue cares. And so he's trying to go along with whatever's going to make his girlfriend happy. There's this gender divide in the film, which makes it seem like only the girls actually care about Carrie White. Like, they're fixated on her because she is the weak link, and none of the guys even seem to know she exists.
That's the thing. And even if they do think she exists, it's more like a shrug, like, whatever.
Like, why are we wasting our time talking about this girl? She's not a part of our lives.
Yeah, the girls really latch on to her.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Chris is like, if I don't kill her, I will kill myself. And you're just like, Chris.
We haven't talked about the pig's blood yet, and we will, but it's just like a thing where it's like, that was your first choice?
Uh-huh. Like, you didn't want to build up to that? You didn't want to start small. Okay.
Nope. Yeah.
So, yes, Tommy briefly approaches Carrie in the library, which does set off the red flag spider senses. So Miss Collins ends up tracking Carrie down, and when we discover, that's what he was doing in the library, he was asking her to prom, Carrie is rightfully suspicious. She's just like, I don't understand why he would have done that. And credit to Miss Collins for being like, well, it's because you're Sissy Spacek and you're fucking gorgeous. So, like, let's take a look at you in the mirror.
And then cut immediately to her grilling Tommy and Sue.
Yes, I do love that transition because she so clearly understands what's going on, but there's no benefit to saying, oh, yeah, they're definitely playing a trick on you.
And this is the most real, like, really anything we'll get out of Sue from, at least dialogue-wise, from most of this movie.
Yeah. Like, I do think this is how it would play out, but it doesn't endear me to Miss Collins a lot, is when she asks Tommy and Sue, well, don't you think you're going to, like, feel a little funny? Or don't you think it's going to look a little silly when you enter the prom with Carrie White on your arm? And I'm just like, oh, so you think this about her too? Like that line with the male faculty member, that was not really a one-off.
So it's a thing where, because I've thought about that exact line every time I watch this movie, and it's a thing where I try to give her the benefit of the doubt and frame it through, she's speaking through the high school hierarchy. Like she knows, whatever she thinks of Carrie, she knows that is what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, she's just realistic.
But I agree, though, that the delivery comes across as, I feel like she believes, like she believes it. She does believe it, but it's almost like she's enforcing it.
Yeah.
Or like, reinforcing it.
You can't change how everybody's going to see it. So why would you even bother to try to go against the established rules of order and so on?
Yes, but I don't think that undoes any of the empathy she has shown towards, empathy or sympathy, whatever you want to decide, towards
I love
Carrie.
That you still can't differentiate them.
Well, because I feel like sympathy is more like, it's like the pity thing where there's a negative connotation to it, but empathy is like, has the positive connotation.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying, though. So whichever one you think she's doing here, is it sympathy or is it empathy? I don't know.
Yeah. She does feel badly for Carrie regardless.
Yes.
And she hypothetically would like to see good things for her, but she also understands what the real world is like.
But I guess that's the same question you were asking about Sue. Is Sue being empathetic or sympathetic to Carrie? And I think with Sue, it is sympathy.
You do? Okay. Yeah. I think it probably starts that way. It's tricky because we truly don't get any kind of resolution for how Sue feels about things. Like, she's just a fucking disaster at the end of the film, right?
Yeah.
Like, she has lost everything and everyone in her life, and then she's having nightmares. That's all we know about how she's processed it.
Yeah.
But I would kind of love to know, is she thinking about her? I mean, I guess that's why we had the Rage too. Or the Rage Carrie too.
But even then, though, I mean, because Sue is also just like she's more than a cameo, but like we don't get.
Yeah,
I feel like I guess she does have more dialogue in that than in this movie, actually. But she's still like a secondary character.
Yeah. You know what? Legacy sequel for Sue Snow that kind of erases or takes place in an alternate universe to the Rage Carrie 2.
I mean, it's just a thing where I wish these characters talked more to each other, but I guess the problem is if they talk more to each other, then the
movie falls apart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Before we leave the scene, I do want to acknowledge the peak 70s-ness of it, which is, well, if Sue sends Tommy to the prom with Carrie, then you can't go to the prom. It's like, because you couldn't possibly go with girlfriends. You couldn't go stay.
No. They say later, the rule is you have to have a date to the prom.
Yeah, and that date has to be opposite genders.
Of course, it's 76. couldn't do that in 99.
I'm just saying, you know what, folks? The world is sometimes like a horrible garbage fire, but sometimes we have also made some progress.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so Tommy is adorably clueless through all of this conversation with Miss Collins. He's like, well, I guess, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do it. And Sue's like, oh, no, it is fucking happening. Like, you can't talk me out of this. We will make it happen.
But Sue's follow-up to that line of Miss Collins saying, oh, aren't you going to look a little ridiculous when you walk in with Carrie White? And Sue says, we don't care how we look, do we? Looking at Tommy. And Tommy kind of just hesitates and laughs nervously. So I'm like, well, yeah, he does care how he looks, but he's doing this for you.
Exactly. Yes, like she is adamantly speaking for both of them, which is a little ironic because he's the one who has to go through it all, and Sue gets to stay home.
Well, she does go try to watch it.
I mean, she tries because she wants to make sure that things are going okay. But yeah, ultimately she has voluntold her boyfriend to do the thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so go he does. He ventures out to the White residence so that he can talk to Carrie, and he won't leave, even though Margaret is calling, unless he gets an affirmative. So...
And I think he also at this point, he doesn't really know Carrie. He doesn't actually feel much for her. But I think in this single interaction between them, I think he starts to soften towards her.
Yeah, because he starts to see her as a real person. They have a conversation, and she's not just some weird girl at school. Imagine if you got to know people and understood them a little bit. Might you begin to think of them as human beings? Yeah, okay. So let's check in with Chris, Billy, and a bunch of their drunken idiot friends because they are sneaking into Old Man Henty's farm so that Billy can kill a pig.
And this is serial killer behavior.
Oh boy, he barely hesitates.
Yeah, he is having so much fun. I guess, did they say in the movie why they choose pig's blood just because Carrie is a pig?
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it's a holdover from the book. Like, there was a reason, not like a big reason, but it was like I think they call Carrie a pig or a sow or something, and that's what it comes from. I don't know. Well, either way, I just love that this was their first idea. Like, we're gonna fuck with Carrie White. What are we gonna do? Pour pig's blood on her at prom.
Yeah, 0 to pig's blood with nothing in between.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a storm that is beginning to rage, which means it must be time for a dinner sequence, Trace. So we've got Carrie floating the idea of, hey, Mom, maybe I might go to prom with this nice boy, Tommy. And I do love the moment where she insists that she is funny and she wants to be normal. And I'm putting normal in air quotes because, again, if we're looking at this through a queer reading... What is the number one thing that queer teenagers will often say to themselves? Like, I just wish that I was normal.
Yeah. I love that. This feels almost like a comedic touch to me, but maybe it's not. But it's
the drink throw.
No, it's when she first asks her mom about the prom, and then Piper Laurie just goes, prom, and then we get this thunder crash and lightning.
Yes. Very strategically timed, Mother Nature. Yeah, Margaret doesn't take to this very well. She tries to order Carrie to go into the closet. She rages about how the boys will come sniffing after the blood, which is, I mean, Piper Laurie is eating this role up, like just knife and forking the dialogue. She's so good. But I love it, right? This is where we start to see Carrie really activate herself as an individual, assert her own independence, and stand up for herself. So she says no, she won't go to the closet, and yes, she will go to prom, and things are going to change.
And I think that's the thing, is like, yes, it's a horror movie, and I think I said either here or in the interview with Darren Stein that for most of this movie it's a drama, but ultimately I view this movie as a tragedy. Like, this movie is so profoundly sad to me, and I think the twist of the knife is that we do have these moments where we see Carrie start to come into her own. She gets more agency, and she's taking charge of her life, albeit in baby steps, but light years ahead of anything she was doing before. And it's so sad because it almost feels like this could be like a typical teen high school movie up until we get to the prom.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And I think that's why it works as well as it does, is because it is building on established conventions, like dealing with teenagers, coming of age, rebelling against parental figures who don't understand, who are absent, or just like not really doing a great job. This is classic YA stuff. And then you just add in telekinesis and extreme religiosity, and you've got a powder keg.
Yep.
Yeah. So speaking of, Margaret tries to get up and just leave the dinner table because, yes, we are in the middle of a storm. So she's going to try to close this window. And Carrie says, let me do it for you all over the house and with my fucking mind.
And then immediately Margaret's like, the devil.
Yeah, Satan's power. And Carrie says, no, this is just me. So she is even owning her difference, right? She just said moments ago, I want to be normal. But now she's also saying, I've got this thing. I'm still the Carrie you know. It's just me, mama. So I've got a quote from another reference. So this is Brandon Tresh, who wrote a piece for Bloody Disgusting called The Power of Identity and Queer Liberation in Carrie. And he says, the scene seems almost explicitly queer. Margaret, distraught with her daughter's abnormality, directs Carrie to lock herself in the closet and repent. When Carrie refuses, Margaret denounces her powers as being derived from Satan and implores her to no longer use them, which is very much like, oh, you're queer? That means you've got the devil in you. Or you just need to stop being queer, right? Like, just have you ever tried not being queer? Have you ever tried not having telekinesis?
I thought you were about to do that. Have you ever tried not being a vampire slayer?
I mean, it all tracks. It's all one and the same, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, it's not subtle. But I mean, granted, in this movie, I don't think they were thinking about queerness when they were doing that. But I don't think
so. No, this is just the other embodied. Like, I think anybody who has ever felt like they have been on the margins could see themselves in Carrie, even if you're like, different skin tone, different gender, different sexual orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, what do you think about this exposition about Carrie's father and what happened with him and that kind of shit?
I mean, we don't really learn much except that her dad left and everybody knows that. Like, that's kind of, I mean, do we get much more than that? And I know in the sequel, Carrie 2, we get more of a backstory, but that's all we really get here, right?
It is that, but as I suggested when we were talking with Darren, it feels like this is one of those pieces where you could start to read into it a lot, right? Like, what was the nature of the relationship between Margaret and Carrie's father? You know, she suggests, oh, it was like Satan that took him away or something. And Carrie's like, oh, I thought he just left.
Yeah,
what
he
are we
left.
Talking about?
That's saying Margaret's delusional. What are the kids? Delulu? Ugh.
Well, I think at this point the kids have stopped saying Delulu, which means it's appropriate for you and I to say it all the time. We old as fuck. This shit Delulu. Yeah. Okay. So let's check back in with Chris and Billy because they're still bickering, but now they've moved on to setting up buckets of blood in the gymnasium. Yeah.
Just check it in.
So they've also pulled other people into the plan. Like, we know that they went to the pig farm with a couple of other people. One of them was Freddie, who is played by Michael Talbot, and he is inserting himself into the prom committee so that he can do some ballot rigging.
He's like, oh, yeah, what time should I be there? 6? I can't do that. I'll see you at 8.
Yeah. Freddie doesn't really understand how the idea of like committee work or volunteerism works.
And this guy says, yeah, that's fine. I'm like, what? No, just tell him no.
No, this person needs some Carrie White activator because he needs to stand up for himself. Okay, and meanwhile, the news that Tommy and Carrie are going to the prom together has spread, and everybody's talking about it. Like, we're getting our hair did, and we are gossiping. We're setting up decorations in the gym, and we're gossiping. We're out hunting for makeup. We're getting tuxedo rentals.
Okay.
Everybody's talking about it.
What about the random moment when the boys are all shopping with their tuxedos?
The
and
fast forward?
The fast forward of the audio? Yes!
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm just like, why is it in here? Why isn't there more of it?
That's the thing. It's on any other scene.
No.
I'm surprised we don't montage it to where we kind of show everyone doing that, but it's just this group of boys. And I'm like, why? Or maybe it's because maybe Brian De Palma was watching the dailies like, this conversation isn't that interesting. Can we just fast forward?
It is bizarre. It feels like the kind of thing where, yeah, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to see more of it later. Like, we get slow-mo early and then we get it often later on. And we get split screen and then we get more split screen later on and so on. Yeah. But yeah, this is the one and only instance. And it truly just feels like Brian De Palma having a bit of fun. Sure. Okay, I love it. Okay, so Carrie is getting dressed and Margaret is desperate to try to change her mind, but she also can't help herself, making comments about her dirty pillows and how Tommy is not going to come and pick her up and everyone is going to laugh at her.
Dirty pillows, man. What?
This is definitely a Kingism. This is a holdover from the book.
Okay, I was going to say, like, if anyone, like, if that was actual lingo used by people in the 70s, I would love to know. But, if it was a Kingism, all right.
Yeah. I mean, have I definitely referred to people's dirty pillows as a result of this text? Yes, I have. Guess what? People don't appreciate it in real life either.
I appreciate it.
Okay, well, you know what? You and your dirty pillows can come with me as we talk through the rest of this film.
I think what gay men call their dirty pillows is just their ass cheeks.
Yeah? Oh, I don't like that as much, though.
Well, because the word dirty with ass has a negative association.
Oh, yeah. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
So, Carrie, no longer shy about using her powers in front of Mom, actually using them on Mom to just kind of smack her into the bed a couple of times, and then Tommy's arrived, so let's go to prom. And folks, you may be like, all right, let's get to it. Yeah, we've got 45 minutes left in this movie.
That's the thing. Like, the prom starts at the 57-minute mark of this. I was shocked. I guess in my mind, I remember the prom being such a short moment, but it's really just the massacre that's the short moment.
And that's it. Like, it's not even short when we get to the massacre. It's well played out. It's nicely paced. It's just that it feels like we have been living in this space for so long because we actually took the time to set the scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is rare. Like, I would love for movies to take their time the way that this movie does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we get this nice moment where Tommy reassures Carrie that they're going to have a good time. She doesn't need to panic. This is, again, Tommy the good guy. He's just an all-around nice person.
Well, I think, again, you can see... There's just something in the way he looks at her where you can see him starting to genuinely care about her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so we do go inside, and this is where Miss Collins comes over and tells Carrie about her prom experience with the blisters and how it turned into this magical night. And they both agree, you know, like, this is really everything's looking great for Carrie moments.
Everything's coming up, Carrie.
Everything's coming. You know what? That's the spinoff that we needed. It's like this alternate WandaVision reality where it's everything's coming up, Carrie.
I'm just telling you, if that's not the song in the musical, like when we start the prom, that's a missed opportunity.
A little tap dance jig. Everything's coming up, Carrie. Yeah. We should note that Sue has bailed on family dinner because she wants to come and check to make sure everything's going okay. And then we're on the dance floor with Tommy and Carrie, and he's teaching her, and we are doing
spins.
Virtually vomit-inducing numbers of spins.
So I read, this was in a review, I can't remember what it was from, but it was basically saying like how effective this particular sequence was because it's revolving around first like a fairy tale almost, but then it speeds up and up and up until it just spins out of control, just like the prom is about to.
Yeah, and also we should note that this interaction ends with him kissing her, and I don't know how this would have played back in the day, but now I wrote in my notes, bad Tommy, what are you doing? What are you thinking? And I don't know if it's that he's gotten caught up in the moment and he is feeling so empathetic towards Carrie and he has connected with her. Like, I think that's the desired idea.
I read it like that.
But you're just like, oh, shit. Like, this is actually not a good development.
I kind of like it.
Really?
I just because I feel like, again, he is caught up in the moment, but I think he's actually like developing feelings for her in this moment. I really do believe that. And granted, yes, he has a girlfriend named Sue who's like right behind the stage. Mm-hmm. But to me, I read this as touching and not bad. I mean,
okay.
It could have negative implications for him if he survived past this night. Yes.
I guess that's my question is like, Tommy doesn't know he's in a horror movie. He doesn't know that he's about to be knocked unconscious and then burned alive. But in his mind, like, I don't think he's actually thinking of it, but what happens the day after, hypothetically?
Sure.
Does he break up with Sue? Does he get together with Carrie?
Totally a valid question. And
I could see it.
Unfortunately, we will never know the answer to that question. Yeah. But I, to be clear, I do get where you are coming from because, yes, this is technically a wrong thing to do, all things considered. But again, I read this as he's developing feelings for her. He's caught up in the moment, and he wants to kiss her. He wants to show her love, or compassion, or feeling, or something. And
all the above. Yeah.
And I get it, like it's not exactly like, the fairy tale kiss we're all wanting, given everything that's going on right now. But I don't know, man. It's just another like stab in the heart for Carrie for me.
Right. Yeah. Because truly, I mean, we made a joke, but it does feel like all of her dreams are coming true after all of this hardship with Chris and the other girls, all of the pain that she suffered through trying to get here, convincing her mom and so on. Like, this is the best moment for her. And of course, it's right before the precipice.
It's not even it's the second best moment, I would argue, because I think her best moment is her face when she's on that stage.
Oh, on the stage. Yeah.
Like, she's so happy. Ugh.
Yeah. That's how you know it's a horror film, because you can see it coming like a fucking slow motion car wreck.
Well, to be clear, also bear in mind, all the marketing for this film spoiled the prom. I mean, like,
that is wild, right?
They weren't showing the prom. I mean, sorry, they were showing the prom, but they weren't showing the massacre. But it's like, the tagline was, if you've got a date with terror, take Carrie to the prom. And the fucking like poster was one of her on the prom stage looking pretty, the other one covered in blood. That's the poster for this movie.
It is wild. Me now would be so fucking pissed off if that was the poster they released, and then I go and I'm like, wait, that's the climax?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And yet, also very effective.
It got people into the theater. That's why it made $33 million.
Truly. Okay. So Sue has snuck into the gym, and she's keeping an eye on how things are developing, and this is where it's now time to vote. So we're going to rig this election, which we all know, but Tommy and Carrie get to have this nice conversation about to the devil with false modesty. Let's vote for ourselves.
That's really significant too. The fact that she doesn't even hesitate. Honestly, she takes a glee in it to be like, to the devil.
I think because she's starting to realize this is what real teenage life could be like. I could be fun. I don't have to feel shame. I don't have to feel bad about everything all the fucking time, Mom.
Yeah. Everything that happens at this prom is just like, it's just gut-wrenching, especially when you know what's going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Which of course we do, because we've seen the booklet being set up above the stage.
And we've seen the poster.
Well, that too. Yeah. Okay. So we get this quick insert shot of Piper Laurie just most aggressively chopping carrot.
To the point where she just starts chopping the cutting board because the carrots fly off the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, oh, I've lost control. How do I get this back? And then we've got Chris explaining to Billy that she has called in favors. So, yes, we talked about Norma a little bit when we were talking with Darren, but this is PJ Souls. I love the fact that she is still wearing her red ball cap to the prom because it is her signature look.
Mm-hmm. It's because it's got to hide those terrible bangs she has.
Yeah, because she was, I think, wasn't she doing some other movie and we had to cut the hair and that's why?
Oh, I think you're right, because also I think this role was originally a bit smaller, but De Palma liked PJ Souls so much that they gave her more to do.
Yeah, and she is very good in this movie. Like, she's fun, and obviously it's not Halloween, but it's
it's so interesting because I was like, I feel like I only know PJ Souls from Carrie and Halloween, but I'm looking. She was in Rock and Roll High School. Mm-hmm. She was in Stripes and Private Benjamin. I don't even remember her in Private Benjamin.
I haven't seen Private Benjamin.
I know you haven't, and we're gonna fix that one day.
Yes. Add it to the list of movies you and I need to watch together. Exactly. Not for the podcast.
We really should just keep an actual list of this stuff
at this point. Yes. Okay, but Norma is going around not at all trying to be covert about picking up all of these ballots and then just dropping them on the ground so that she can put in the fake one.
And then she kicks them under like a bench or something. And I was like, girl, come on.
It's so obvious. It's so obvious. Yeah. But then we've got this long take as we...
It's a tracking shot, right?
Yeah, so we track from the stage up to the bucket of blood above.
Well, because we're following the rope.
Yes, exactly. And then this is when Carrie and Tommy are announced as the winners, and we're moving through the crowd, but it's all in slow-mo. Like, the next, I want to say 10 minutes of the movie is all in slow motion.
What I love too is because, we get this tracking shot for the rope up to the bucket. So then we have it's still the same shot. So it's like a crane overhead shot.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that we don't even cut when we announce the king and the queen. Like we don't make a big to do of it. Like we are announcing the king and queen as we're in the middle of this. Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh, we're just getting right to it.
Just into it. But if you think about it, like we have been at the prom for a while. We have been building anticipation and tension, and that will continue, right? Like, so we have these kinds of shots. We've got the scene of Sue where she comes out because she wants to see her boyfriend and this girl that she either feels sympathy or empathy for up on stage. And of course, she just happens to lean or put her hand onto the cord that Chris is jostling. And Trace, I want to know, is one of your favorite shots in this movie the close-up of Chris biting her lip?
Yeah.
Because it is so fucking stylish.
So there's so many things about this sequence that are amazing. But honestly, my one thing, if I had to pick one thing that I love, it is Pino Donaggio's score.
Oh, the score is perfect.
It's the track that is quite literally called Bucket of Blood. And it is. I mean, I listen to this in my car sometimes. Because it's just so fun. I mean, it's not fun, sorry. But
I was going to say, sir, that sounds like a very tense car ride.
It is a very tense car ride, but I'm just like, dum, 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 dum.
Yeah. It's so good at just ratcheting up the tension and the suspense. Like this, to me, if you're going to say, oh, Brian De Palma, he's a bit of a hack. He's so Hitchcockian. He's just taking all the good bits of Hitchcock and repurposing them, and it's second rate. Okay, but if we get results like this, I don't fucking care.
It's so funny. I bought the Carrie soundtrack on vinyl when they had it. I think it was a Waxwork release, but I bought it for that track because I was like, I'm going to listen to that song as much as I want.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because the soundtrack, it's like side A is like Pino Donaggio's score, and side B is all the songs that play during the prom sequence.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, so you can have your own Carrie prom if you want.
I mean, don't, but yes, you could.
But I think that's also why we don't make a big to-do out of announcing the king and queen, because we already know they're going to win. We don't need to build suspense for that. The suspense is when/if is that bucket going to fall?
Oh my God, there is no if, because Chris is so eager with anticipation. Her hand is jostling with adrenaline.
Do you remember, like, when you were a kid, I know you didn't watch a lot of movies as a kid, but like, did you ever have a phase where you actually thought that movies, like, they could change if you watched them again? Like, it wouldn't always be the same movie every time?
I did, yes.
Okay, so I had the exact same thing. Sleeping Beauty, I was always like, no, she's not going to hit the spindle. She's going to be fine. She's going to learn. Nope, never learned. Always hit it. And even as an adult now, watching Carrie, I'm like, maybe they won't drop the bucket on her.
Right? Maybe they'll learn their lesson. This is a human fucking being. Just let her have her goddamn moment. Let her have this night.
Yeah. And nope. She bucket falls every single time. But this moment, Sue catches Billy and Chris.
Yeah.
But because no one's talking in this movie, Miss Collins thinks she's there to fuck up Carrie. She's like, you're not supposed to be here, and throws her out. And I'm like, Sue, you're pointing at the stage. Why aren't you saying Billy and Chris are under there?
Yeah. No, I mean, the fun thing about this is that none of the audio is in, right? So we're just getting Donaggio's score, and we don't know what Sue is trying to yell at Miss Collins. Presumably, she is saying, like, there's something under there, or, like, they're going to do something. And, of course, Miss Collins is she is laser focused. Sue is the bad person here. I just need to get her out of this, and Carrie can have her moment. And you understand, it's all miscommunication. And meanwhile, of course, Chris is just biting her lip, waiting for the perfect time. That sheer force of will when she yanks on that cord, like, I can imagine a world where Chris, like, dislocates a shoulder because she pulled on it so fucking hard, because she just
And we didn't point this out too, but this is also some masterful editing on display.
Oh,
the way we are cutting between, because we don't have a lot of time with people once the massacre starts, so we are checking in with, like, every single person right before this bucket falls.
Yeah, we're establishing. Here's the thing: we want to talk about some Wes Craven geography. We know where everyone is in this gym, and, like, even when we do new things, like, it's so much chaos. It's so disorienting, but it's not at all for the audience. Like, we completely understand how the action is flowing once the carnage begins.
And then we get to, I'll wait till yes, absolutely.
Okay, so Peg's blood falls onto Carrie. She is stunned. bucket falls, hits Tommy, knocks him out. This is all slow motion.
Yes, and this is the same fate that Tommy has in every single version of this movie. And I do believe, if I remember correctly, in the novel, the newspaper report states that Tommy was actually killed by the bucket fall.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, either way, however you read it, he either gets killed by the bucket or he gets killed because he's passed out while the whole thing burns down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I do love the way that this is done. So we still have some of Donaggio's score, but it is silence, like the diegetic sound within the world of the film. We get silence, but then...
the dripping of the bucket, yeah.
The dripping of the bucket and the clang of it hitting the beam. And I think it's just so smart, right? Because it kind of removes everything. So really, it's all visual attention. Like, we're not distracted by anything else. We just get to watch. And I really do think that this is part of the reason why people respond so strongly to Spacek's performance, because watching her transform from Carrie into Uber Carrie.
Monstro Alyssa Carrie.
Kind of. I mean, yeah, like, if you want, we can have a conversation about whether or not this is Carrie the monster. And I could see people trying to make that argument and say, well, she just fucking kills everybody. Like, where's her remorse? Where's the good Carrie? I'm just gonna say, this is like female revenge. This is queer rage. Like, this is all of the, you know what? Have I lost my mind because I'm killing innocent people as well as guilty people? Sure. Carrie is owed this debt of blood.
Yeah, but I'm also kind of like, and we kind of discussed this with Darren, but like, it's a thing where I think she's kind of gone into a fugue state here. Like, I mean, like,
the eyes alone.
Yes, but because we never hear Carrie talk about what happened outside of the fact that she got pig's blood poured on her. And so we we never really learn if she's hyper aware during this moment. And, you know, I think the way De Palma shoots it, you know, because, she looks at the light and boom, we get a light change and everything turns red in this room, which is...
Yeah. It's like she does seem to understand, but also does she actually understand what she's doing? Question mark.
That's the other thing, you know, because the biggest tragedy in this scene is Miss Collins' death to me, because it's just like, because this is also the only version of this story where she dies. I'm sorry. She does die in the musical too, but she does not die in the book or any of the other two remakes of this.
I like it because I find it so affective, as in like, it bothers me so much every time, because I'm just like, no, she's innocent. No, she actually does like you, Carrie. Don't do this to her. And then you're like, oh no, that's the point.
And so here's the thing, though, because I love how I was like, oh, the thing that really stands out to me is the score. And I'm like, oh, but the editing's really good. Oh, the lighting's good. Oh my God, the sound design's so
good.
Or
just everything is so good. Is working.
But so we get, when Carrie starts losing it, we get this like kaleidoscopic filter as she's watching
Trace,
everyone.
I have never seen this in any other film. I've watched a bunch of movies where people do drugs, and this is still some of the trippiest imagery I think I've ever seen put on screen.
And that's it, because this is meant to be Carrie's viewpoint, and so this is the representation of her losing her mind, or at least her mind fracturing. That's why it's a kaleidoscope. And we have a shot of Miss Collins laughing.
And she's not laughing, because we do get confirmation. Like, I actually don't think anybody is laughing except Norma and maybe that one other shithead guy.
That's what I think as well. But I saw a quote from Brian De Palma, because I Googled, because I read this as, yes, no, she is imagining Miss Collins laughing at her. Like, that is not actually happening. But I Googled it just in case. But apparently this is a question that has been asked to Brian De Palma ever since the
movie came out. Really?
And he says,
think it's so obvious.
I think so too. But yeah, he says no. Like, she is not laughing at Carrie. Absolutely not. Like, most people are not laughing at Carrie in that scene.
Yeah, because we even get this moment after the blood hits her, and then I think maybe before the bucket hits Tommy, because he silently looks out and he, like you can tell he's saying like, who the fuck did this? What is wrong with you? Kind of. But we see this pan shot of the crowd very quickly, and it is stunned silence. Like, people are shocked and appalled, and then Norma laughs.
Well, and that's the thing, because the sound we have is Margaret White saying they're all going to laugh at you. Like, because that's exactly so she, all of the horrible things her mother has done, all the horrible things the kids have done are hitting Carrie at one point right now. And so she is, I mean, again, is there a little bit of awareness here? Sure, maybe. But at the end of the day, like, I don't view Carrie as a monster, because I guess she's owed the debt of blood.
Yeah, at least in the state that she's in, right? Like, because she believes that everyone is laughing at her and it has all just been this cruel prank. So, yeah, in the world that she is living in this kaleidoscopic, they're all going to laugh at you, then, yeah, I mean, unleash it, Carrie.
Yeah.
Let him have it.
Kill these fuckers. Which is
what we do.
Yeah, we electrocute people. Poor Norma. Norma the bitch. Norma is fire hosed to death, which I love.
Yeah, shall we do the fun fact that everybody knows?
Oh, that she hurt her ear or something when she was getting sprayed?
They actually did knock PJ Souls unconscious.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Cause we haven't mentioned her, but I want to mention her because of the actress, but Helen, the character played by Edie McClurg.
Okay.
Do you know who that is?
No.
Have you seen Ferris Bueller?
Yes.
She's the woman who keeps like calling to be like, oh yeah. She's like the principal's assistant.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she's in this movie as a teenager, which you probably would never notice because she constantly looks the same age all the time. Oh, she was also she's the religious zealot in Elvira Mistress of the Dark. She's the one that hates Elvira. But
yes. Okay, now I know exactly who you mean.
Yes, but she's the girl with the really big glasses in here, and she definitely dies in this scene. But I can never see where she dies because she is one of the other girls that she doesn't have a lot of speaking lines, but we cut to her face a lot during the whole movie.
Okay. Interesting.
Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like there's only a couple of people's fates who are absolutely confirmed, and the insinuation is just that everybody who's in that gym is just gonna, they either got out from the water, they either got electrocuted, they got hit by the sign or the rafter that's falling, and then if not, you get fire.
I will say too, the shot of Carrie when the curtain behind her just lights up on fire. Oh, it's so cool.
It's so good. I love that kind of ethereal moment where she just like. Even just the fact that she slowly walks out of here because she is so in control of the entire environment now. Mm-hmm. But I love the image of the door opening, her coming out. And obviously, she's doing it with telekinetic. Yeah, but I do love that it kind of holds and you think, oh, maybe she'll leave it. No, she's just going to shut it. But it's so well paced. Just she's taking her time because she is so fully in control.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you would think, okay, well, the movie's now over because we killed everybody. Like, Sue managed to get out. Chris and Billy managed to get out. Yes! Leave the door.
Yeah.
But everybody else is dead. Okay, so there's nothing left to deal with. And then you realize, oh, we still have to deal with Chris and Billy, and we've got to deal with Margaret. So that's why there's still so much left in the film.
And we do get to see Chris and Billy watching the mayhem in the prom. I do wish we had gotten, like, a soundbite where we could actually hear them, like, talking about this.
Yeah, they look briefly shocked, but then we're back into the action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about their deaths. I take it you wish that this was something a little bit more.
Okay. I said this with Darren, but I'm going to repeat this anyway for anyone that did not listen to that interview. But I will say, the 2013 remake that's directed by Kimberly Pierce, here's the thing. I don't think it's a bad movie. It's just like, it is the epitome of why did we remake this? Because it's basically the same movie, albeit with a few, like, modern updates like cell phones and shit,
Right, okay.
Social media plays a part in it. But, and so here's the thing, like, if you like Carrie, it's worth a watch. I mean, if only for the cast, you have Judy Greer as the gym teacher. Tommy Ross is Ansel Elgort, by the way.
Oh, okay.
And then Portia Doubleday is an amazing Chris. I really, really like Portia Doubleday's Chris. But the one thing that has always irked me about the original Carrie is that, I mean, Chris is a reprehensible character.
Yes.
And the fact that she just, quote unquote, gets blowing up in a car that's flipping over, that has never worked for me. I want to see this. I want to hear her screams. Her suffer. I want to hear her screams in that car as she's on fire. I want her to still be alive when that car blows up.
Wow.
So, I will say, because I think her death is similar in the 2002 remake where it's Emily DeRavin playing her, but Carrie just throws her car into a telephone pole and that's how they die.
Oh, okay.
But in the Kimberly Pierce one, oh my God, they still try to run her down. Carrie, Chloe Grace Moritz, like, stops the car telekinetically, and Billy is not wearing a seatbelt, so he just, like, Carrie, like, stops the car in midair when they're trying to run her over, and his head just goes face first into the steering wheel.
Oh, okay.
And I think the implication is that he dies, but then Carrie, like, lifts the car up. Chris is still alive, and she throws it into a gas station, but it doesn't blow up yet. And basically, Carrie walks over to the car, and Chris's face has, like, gone partially through the windshield.
Oh, wow.
But the windshield isn't broken yet. So, like, it's like her face just wedged into a face-shaped hole in the windshield. And Carrie just watches her die in front of her eyes. and she dies slow.
Okay.
I think you can just look at this clip on YouTube. Like, just Google Chris Death Carrie 2013. Like, it's worth the price of admission alone for me. Like, totally worth it.
Oh my God. That is a lot.
Most deserving death. Because again, like, she needed to see that she died. She needed to see that Carrie was doing this to her. But anyway, so Chris and Billy are dead. They blow up because we got to get to Mom.
Yeah, I do like the car roll, though, I will say. I'm always a big fan of when a car rolls.
And we do get a shot, like, of them, like spinning and screaming before the car blows up.
It's just so fast.
Well, that's the thing. Like, yeah, we have no time. We don't have time to process this. They don't have time to process this before they blow up.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Carrie returns home to organ music as well as a million candles. So I guess we know what Margaret was doing after she stopped cutting that carrot. She was just like, well, I guess I got to spend the rest of the night lighting candles.
The organ music, though, is a really nice touch.
It is. It's pretty lovely because we haven't really talked about it, but there are aspects of the house that really do feel like a church. Like even the entryway into the kitchen looks like it's got an arch, almost like what you would see in a church. And then I mentioned the closet feels a bit like a confessional and so on. So we really made a religious home.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So Margaret, who the fuck knows where she is during all of this, but Carrie has time to go and bathe herself, to put on her nightgown.
Wait, did you not notice? So when Carrie walks upstairs to her room and she goes to the bathroom, so there's the dress mannequin that's up there right by the door.
Yes.
Behind the door is Margaret. Like she's standing there, but she looks like almost just like another mannequin, but you can see her hair.
Okay.
So she's like the whole time, when we're following Carrie from before the bath to after the bath, Margaret is behind that door the entire time.
Oh, wow. Okay, so both mother and daughter are now off the deep end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so eventually Margaret comes out, and this is the part that kind of breaks my heart, purposely so, but Carrie asks her mother to hold her. And what does Margaret do? We launch into this whole talk, this whole rant about how, she had sex with this guy and it was dirty, but then she grew to like it, even though she said no, and how she should have killed herself, but then she didn't. And then she had Carrie and maybe she should have killed Carrie. And you're just like, in some ways, it's so fucking bananas that I almost laugh because I'm just like, Margaret, for God's sake, read the fucking room. It's not about you.
Laurie, like, she toes a fine line in these scenes because, because her delivery of and I liked it. Yeah. Like, it just lives rent-free in my brain. And it could come across as comedic. And I have been in screenings of Carrie where people do laugh at this.
I think this is one of those moments, though, where people laugh not because the performance itself is funny. It's because you're so uncomfortable with what she's doing. Like, at this point, knowing what Carrie has been through, and to a certain extent, knowing how much Margaret has been through, because she's clearly not in her right mind. Yeah. But I can understand why people maybe laugh.
Yeah. I mean, well, wait till we get to her death, then I'll tell you some more.
Oh, okay. Maybe not then. Okay. So, yes, we do end up embracing mother and daughter. And then this is mostly just so that we can get close to Carrie because we mentioned, I should have killed you then, but I'm going to try to kill you now. So where is Margaret hiding all of these secret knives? But I know. So she stabs poor Carrie right in the back, and Carrie falls down the stairs, and then Mom is so off the hook at this point. Like, she looks gleeful as she advances on her daughter with this knife.
Well, also the score is like the do 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 do.
Yeah, it's kind of like a perverted lullaby.
Yeah.
In a way.
Oh, yes, 100%.
But I would argue that Margaret is in a state of religious ecstasy. Like, whether or not she knows what she's doing, it's kind of the same conversation we had about whether or not Carrie is really cognizant of what's happening at the prom. But I don't feel any level of empathy for Margaret that I do for Carrie.
Yeah, I will say, so you're spot on with religious ecstasy because, so what happens is Carrie kills her by throwing a bunch of knives and shit at her and she dies.
If there's a sharp instrument around, Carrie's going to stick it in her.
But the way Laurie plays this is like she's having an orgasm as she's dying.
Yes.
And again, this is something I have totally witnessed people laugh at this. But
really? Oh, that is so wild.
The idea and what I believe De Palma told Laurie whenever they were directing this was, well, if you think about it, though, this is Margaret's greatest dream, like to meet her maker. And so you would be like orgasmic almost when you are in the throes of death because you're about to go, like your whole life has been leading to this moment.
Right. Yeah. And to a bit of a gross reading, in some ways, she always thought that Carrie was this sort of bastard, or like that Carrie was going to betray her when she came of age and so on. So this is also a confirmation that Margaret was right after all.
Well, I mean, if she would have been such a bitch.
I mean, in her mind is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. But no. So we get stabbed a billion times by a bunch of different instruments, but also pinned to the door so that we look like Jesus.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
And then this is the moment where I do think that Carrie kind of comes out of it and she realizes Mom is dead. So we unhook one of the knives that is keeping her upright so that Margaret can fall into her arms. And as soon as they embrace, this whole house starts to come down.
The fact that Carrie dies, again, every time, which I will say, at least in that 2002 miniseries, which was supposed to be like a pilot for a television series.
Oh, right.
We do not kill Carrie in that movie.
Interesting. So, like, she gets away? She's discovered alive under the rubble?
Sue finds her. So, basically, Sue drives her out of town because the premise for the television show was going to be that Carrie is going around the country, like, meeting other telekinetic girls. Like kind of going with the book's ending where it's like, oh, there's other girls out there.
Right.
And, like, teaching them and training them. It sounded kind of like, I mean, again, Brian Fuller wrote the screenplay, so it kind of sounds like he's pulling a little bit from Buffy in there.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Could see it.
Yeah.
Okay. That is not what happens here. The whole house comes down on them after they hide in the closet because, of course, it's safe, vaguely religious undertones. And, the whole thing comes down. And I really actually hate the shot that we see that confirms that Carrie is dead, bloodied, and so on. I get the need for it. It's a bit of closure for the audience and also sets up the jump scare. But I'm just like... It feels like I have been stabbed with multiple instruments because I'm just like, poor fucking Carrie. She didn't deserve any of this.
I don't want to see that.
No, at the end of a long day, I don't want to see that. Yeah. Okay, so she did. And then we get this kind of coda that I'm going to say feels just a smidge tacked on.
It does, but here's the thing, though. That's what you have to think of. This would have been revelatory in 1976. Like,
it's the OG.
Yeah, like the reason we have so many of these things is because of this movie and Friday the 13th.
Yeah, exactly that. So we pick back up with Sue. We learn from her mother, once again talking on the phone, that Sue is not okay. She's sleeping a lot. She's not going to go to the funerals.
Wait, I'm sorry, but the doctor said that she's young enough that she'll forget all of this in time.
Sure.
And I'm like,
she's
no!
not. She's not 2, sir. She's fully a teenager. She will not forget any of this unless she is so fucking traumatized that she just forgets whole years of her life.
If it's her senior prom, she's 18. Bitch is an adult. Like, come on.
Yeah. Like I've heard of traumatic amnesia, but it will come back. It's gonna manifest. Like
just a little bit.
Sue Snell's going to be one of those women in like a Riley Sanger novel or something where it's like final girl PTSD. Whatever. Anyway,
but I will say that this compared to other stingers, like the music cue that accompanies it isn't like a boom, like it's not a jump.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It is a jump scare, but it's also feels different from the jump scares that would imitate it later.
Yeah. I will say one of the other interesting things is that we talked about how there's this kind of hazy, Vaseline, dreamlike imagery. It actually does remind me a little bit about how Wes Craven shoots the end of Nightmare on Elm Street in 84.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that it doesn't immediately telegraph itself. Like there's some weird things that tell you as an audience member, oh, this doesn't quite gel. But we see Sue dropping off this flower at Carrie's gravesite, but the gravesite is on the grounds of where the house went into the earth, but I kind of liked it because we did see the house go into the earth. So you could mistake it as, oh, okay, yeah, that's if Carrie is a pariah because she killed all of the kids at high school and like maybe half the town, they might say, oh, well, she's not getting buried in the cemetery. We can just stick a fucking, stake where she died and
write Carrie White burns in hell all over it. Yeah.
Burns in hell. Yeah.
And that's the shitty thing too. Her legacy is that she's like a monster like burning in hell. Yes, absolutely. Like, ugh.
Yeah. And instead we get this lovely jump scare and then we're out.
Well, I do love... So apparently, too, we have Amy Irving waking up and screaming. So the last we see of Amy Irving is, like, she's in hysterics.
Yeah. She can hang out with Sally Hardesty.
Yes. Priscilla Pointer, who plays her mother in this film, is Amy Irving's mother in real life. And
oh, didn't know that. Okay.
Apparently, like, she was so shocked because she had never seen her daughter like this. She actually screamed, Amy! Instead of Sue whenever she started, convulsing. And that actually is in the final cut, but the music is playing over it, so we don't hear the snafu.
Right. Okay. That's funny.
And that's Carrie.
That's Carrie.
I love this movie. I just don't revisit it often because it just makes me so sad.
Yeah. You said tragedy several times, and it is absolutely that. Like, that's the power of Sissy Spacek's performance, as well as how just... It's so good at setting all of these things up where you think, oh, she's such a sad, pathetic figure, but not by anything that she's actually done. Like, my criticism from a 2025 point of view is I look at Sissy Spacek and I'm like, this gorgeous girl is being bullied for being a little bit weird. She doesn't do anything in this movie. And she's also, like, supermodel gorgeous. So, but I mean, all of the women who play Carrie are... like visually perfection. So
well, yeah, I think I like Chloe Grace Moritz, but like it's the thing where it's like, I think she's the least Carrie-y to me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of her looks, I think the way she plays her is okay. Again, like watch Julianne Moore in that movie. It's kind of fun to watch her kind of ham it up as Margaret.
Oh, I bet it is. Yeah.
But okay, everyone. Well, that's Carrie. So some quick housekeeping before we close this up. Before we announce what we're covering next week, some quick housekeeping. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at HorrorQueers. Shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. If you want to chat with other listeners, join our Facebook Horror Queers group. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. If you subscribe today, you will get 360 and a half hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on Bloody Axe Wound, The Creep Tape Season 1, Squid Game Seasons 1 and 2, Lee Winnell's Wolfman, and a brand new audio commentary on sci-fi schlock Supernova for its 25th anniversary.
Woo! Space Slut.
Yes, Space Slut. Oh my god. Joe, what are we talking about next week?
Okay, well, we're going to enter into a new month. It's Love is in the Air, so let's talk about more fucked up people, but let's double them. So we're going to talk about Tom Ford's sophomore effort, Nocturnal Animals.
A movie that I don't think was given a fair shake when it came out, because I feel like no one went to go see this movie.
I don't think so either. It did have some controversy around its use of plus-size models, so I'm interested to revisit that section of it. But yeah, this is a pretty film. We're going to have a lot of talk about doubles and doppelgangers, and I don't know. I've only seen it the one time, but I'm excited to revisit.
Yeah, I've only seen it once, but I remember quite liking it.
If nothing else, it's stylish as fuck.
And Amy Adams is playing a very unlikable character that I love. I love it.
I mean, there we go. That's how the movie got sold to you.
There you go. But until next week, everyone, we can cross out Carrie.
Indeed. And cross out Horror Queers.